Hey, this is 11 honors literature, and I'm going to be answering some questions about Huck Finn that we did in class. The video in class did not um, work, so I will do it here. And so if anybody missed these answers, here's a good opportunity to get them. So it's in the study guide, chapters 19 through 23. I'll read the question and then briefly summarize it. All right, so question number one, to describe the king and the duke and how Huck meets them. The king and the duke are con men, and Huck meets them when he's on shore, just checking things out, and they are being chased by a mob, and so they get on the raft with Huck and Jim. Number two, what traits do Pap, the duke, and the king have in common? In some ways, Pap was also a con man. He was certainly violent, but he could be charming, and he charmed the judge into thinking he was reformed in order for Pap to get money out of him. And so, like the Duke and the King, who are also can be charming and put on an act. Number three, how does the king swindle the people at the camp meeting in the little country town of Polkville? He's able to swindle them because they are gullible. He pretends to be a pirate from the Indian Ocean, and during this camp meeting, he's pretending that he just was saved and wants to raise money to go back and save the other sailors, other pirates in the Indian Ocean. It's an outlandish story, but because the people there are gullible, because they really want that to happen. That's the kind of thing you would want to happen at a revival. They are able to. They believe him, and they actually raise money for him. Number four, what stratagem does the Duke devise to permit them to travel with Jim by day? The strategy is to print off an announcement that he is an escaped slave, and they've captured him or taking him back. The irony of that is it's actually true. He is an escaped slave, and but they have not captured him, and they are not taking him back. But that way, people would not suspect that he's trying to get away. That is, Jim is. Number five, what kind of man is Boggs? Is he dangerous? Boggs is just the town drunk, and he's not dangerous. Number six, what kind of man is Sherburne? Does it remind you of any other character you have met in the novel? Why? Sherburne is a respectable man. He's a strong man, well-dressed, wealthy, a man of his word. And so when Sherburne is insulted by Boggs, Sherburne threatens to kill him if he doesn't leave town by 1 o'clock. And he should remind us of Colonel Grangerford, who was also a kindly, respectable-looking, nice man, except he was also a murderer. Why does Colonel Sherburne shoot Boggs? Simply because, Boggs wouldn't leave town at 1 o'clock, and he's a man of his word. But I do not believe that that's legal to shoot somebody, to kill somebody because they called you a name. You can fight back if someone is hurting you, but we don't have the right to do that. So he murdered him in the street, an unarmed drunk man. Number eight, why does the lynching bee fail? It fails because one man, Sherburne, stands up to them, and he's got a double-barrel shotgun. Now, the mob could take him because they have him outnumbered, and the only reason they don't is because nobody wants to be the 2 or 3 people that Sherburne could kill before they get to him. So he also insults them. He calls them liars and tells them that's what mobs do. They don't have the courage to convict somebody in the daytime in a court of law, but they'll take the same man out at night while they're wearing hoods, and they'll lynch him because they're cowards. Number nine addresses the question of the royal nonsuch, which is a scheme that the Duke and the King used to cheat the people of a particular Arkansas town. They want to put on a play about Shakespeare, but nobody comes, and it's not interesting. So they put on a different show. And what happens is that they print out a handbill that says, women and children not allowed. So that got everybody, all the men in the town, they got their attention, and they show up in droves. What they see is about 30 seconds of the king prancing around stage naked, painted with paint with circles around him. And that's all they got for their money's worth. The audience doesn't like it, and they want to go tar and feather these guys who cheated them. But they decide later that they decide after they talk about it that they're going to invite the other people in town who didn't go the first night, so that these people won't be the only ones who fell for the joke. And so the second night they do the same thing, and the second group is also equally upset about it. So the third night, they all come back with things put in their pocket, like vegetables they're going to throw at the king and the duke, and they're planning to get their revenge. But the king and the duke are too smart for them. They leave before the show starts, so the crowd is sitting around thinking they're going to hurt the king and the duke, while the king and the duke are already with Huck, already floating down the river. On the raft, number 10, during the night, what does Jim do for Huck? Jim takes his watch. Jim is a good father to Huck and does little things like that, takes care of him, and so at night sometimes he'll take his watch so Huck can sleep. Number 11, at daybreak, Huck observed that Jim is moaning and mourning to himself. Why is Jim mourning? He's mourning because he misses his family. And I'm just looking at the questions A, B, and C. This love Jim has for his family seems unnatural to Huck because he's been raised that slaves are not as human as he is. They don't have the emotions or the love that he does, is that white people do. And so they are, he believes that lie and that stereotype. Jim also tells a story about his little girl, Elizabeth, who one day was standing by the door, and Jim asked his daughter to close the door, and she ignored him. She asked again, she ignored him. It makes him so upset, he goes over and he slaps her. At that moment, a gust of wind blows the door shut really loud, so loud that Jim jumps, but he notices that Elizabeth does not jump, and he discovers that she didn't jump because she didn't hear, and she didn't hear because she was deaf, and he felt terrible about striking his daughter, who was just innocently standing there. This story tells Huck how much Jim, just like anyone else, would feel the same way about it. As a family man, loves his family, and that surprises Huck. The last question asks, what is Huck beginning to learn about Jim? And he's learning that Jim is a human being, and all slaves are human beings, just like Huck is. And this comes as a surprise to him. Number 12, Huck tells another of his autobiographical lies to the king and the duke. Huck often invents a whole family for himself, complete with brothers, sisters, and uncles. What inner truth about Huck does this aspect of his lies suggest? Well, Huck used to have a family. His father's no longer with him. We never see his mother. She died. I think he may have brothers and sisters. So never having had a family, when he lies about his identity, he invents a family. And I think it suggests that it's just this desire to be a part of a family, which Huck never was. Interestingly, though, the stories that he tells always involve some problem. Like in one story, he told his father had smallpox. So, the story is also true there. His family had gone through a lot. Number 13, like the new judge in Huck's hometown, the crowd at the camp meeting is sentimental. Compare the way the judge treated Pap and the way the crowd treats the king. The judge wants to reform Pap, and he wants it so bad that he imagines that it's true when Pap is pretending to be reformed, the judge wants it to be. So he believes this lie. He finds out that Pap was pretending. Same thing true with the sentimental crowd. They let their emotions and their desires to have someone saved overcome the reality of it, and they're not able to think straight. Sentimental people don't think clearly. I'm turning the page, and we'll do one more, and that is number 14. In describing the Grangerfords, Huck shows us sentimentalism of Emmeline Grangerford's poems and pictures and the violence of the feud. In describing the people of the two little river towns, he once again reveals sentimental and violent side by side. What do you think Huck, that is Mark Twain, is suggesting about the relationship between sentimentalism and violence? The relationship is sentimentalism is based completely on emotions, and people who are sentimental don't think clearly. And violence is often the result of people who react and act only emotions only and are not thinking clearly. Is Huck at all sentimental? No, he's not. We have lots of examples about the way he treated the men on board the wrecked steamboat. He hated having to leave them there, and then they eventually died there. But he was very practical about it. It was either him and Jim or the bank robbers. When Buck dies, he says it really hurt him, and he had bad dreams about it later. But he only cries a little bit, and he goes about his life. In fact, he never mentions Buck again in the book, which shows a very practical way of looking at emotions. They're real, but they don't overcome Buck. And the last question was the small Arkansas town where Boggs and Sherburne live, and the town's reaction to Boggs and the drunken man at the circus. How are these? Well, also sentimental. The Boggs crowd, they felt sorry for Boggs because he's a drunk man, and they tried to fix that by going after Sherburne. They could have taken him to court because he murdered him in broad daylight, but they were afraid to. So their emotions are constantly driving them. And the drunken man at the circus is one of my favorite stories because it shows Huck never seen a circus, and he didn't realize this man that was riding this horse, it looked like he was in danger, and Huck, being such a nice guy, was worried about him, whereas the crowd was laughing at him because the crowd understood that the guy was not a drunk man at all. He was a member of the circus, and it was just an act. The crowd, however, was enjoying it, and Huck couldn't enjoy it because he worried about him. Huck is not sentimental. If he were, he probably would have gone along with the emotions of the crowd. He truly worried about it. He just didn't have enough information. So I'm going to stop here. We've done 14 questions on chapter 19 through 23, and I will post this today. Thank you.